Hello everyone, welcome back to this lecture series on approximate methods in quantum chemistry. This is lecture number 3. In the last two lectures we were discussed about the different approximate methods available in quantum chemistry, and I also introduced how to write Hamiltonian operator for many electron systems. In this lecture I am going to start the variation method. So in variation method, first of all we should know what is variation theorem, then what is the proof of this variation theorem. Okay, so I am going to discuss variation theorem and the proof of variation theorem in this lecture. Okay, see, as I told you in lecture number 1, that in variation method the first step is we propose a trial wave function. Okay, we propose a trial wave function. Then using the trial wave function we'll calculate the expectation energy. Okay, then we compare that expectation energy with the actual ground state energy of the system, and what variation theorem says is that the expectation energy that you have calculated using the trial wave function will be most of the times greater than the ground state energy of the system, the actual ground state energy of the system. Very rarely it will be equal. Okay, that is why we say that variation theorem gives upper bound on the ground state energy of the system. It gives the energy which is upper bound on the ground state energy of the system. Okay, yeah. So now what is the proof for this? Okay, we are saying that expectation energy is always greater than E naught. Very rarely it is equal to E naught. Expectation energy never be less than the actual ground state energy of the system. Okay, what is the proof for this? How to prove it? Right? Yeah. So we can prove this by using some mathematical idea. Okay, let us consider a system. For this system we have quantized energy levels. Okay, this is the energy of the ground level E naught, and this is energy of the first exit level, second level, third level, and these are the corresponding wave functions. Listen, so for any system, definitely the energies of the levels and corresponding wave functions definitely must exist. Okay, but for us, since we are dealing with the many electron system, okay, right now we don't know what is the exact energies of these levels and exact wave functions of these. So mathematically these wave functions and energies are not known, but we know very well definitely they must exist. Okay, the energies and wave functions must exist, but right now we don't know what is the mathematical form of those energies and wave functions. Okay, right. So since these wave functions are the eigenfunctions of the given system, okay, these wave functions, that is psi naught, psi 1, psi 2, etc., they form a complete orthonormal set. Right. So these are all eigenfunctions. These are all eigenfunctions of the system. Eigenfunctions. Okay, and they form complete orthonormal set. What is orthonormal set? Each of these wave functions are individually normalized. That is psi naught star psi naught d tau should be equal to 1. Similarly, psi 1 star psi 1 d tau should be equal to 1. They are individually normalized and mutually orthogonal. What is meant by that? Psi naught star psi 1 d tau should be equal to 0. If the wave functions are different wave functions or wave functions of different state, then the corresponding integral becomes 0. Okay, so it means the wave functions of two different states in the present case, right, they are orthogonal. So the wave functions are individually normalized and they are mutually orthogonal, so they form a complete orthonormal set. Okay, now what I'm going to do, I'm going to guess a trial wave function, right? I'm going to guess a trial wave function which must be an acceptable wave function. It should obey the boundary condition of the problem. Okay, you know very well, any acceptable wave function can be given as the linear combination of these eigenfunctions, okay, or the linear combination of these orthonormal set of functions, right? So what I'm trying to say, listen, the trial wave function for this system, okay, I'm choosing a trial wave function. Since it is an acceptable wave function, we can give, or we can write the trial wave function as the linear combination of, okay, the eigenfunctions of the system. Psi naught, psi 1, psi 2, these are all eigenfunctions, but keep this in mind. Right now, we don't know what is the exact form of these wave functions. Okay, we really don't know what is the exact form of these wave functions, but definitely these wave functions must exist. Okay, they are possible functions. So I'm taking linear combination of those functions, right, and I'm writing the trial wave function like this. Now what we have to do, we have to calculate the expectation energy, right, using this trial wave function, right? So this is the formula for expectation energy, right? Integral phi t star h operator phi t into d tau over integral phi t star phi t d tau. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to substitute this trial wave function right here, and I'm going to plug these trial wave functions here, 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 and here, and I'm going to calculate the expectation energy of the system. Okay, so if I substitute this phi t, right, in this in this equation, what will I get? Yeah, so if I introduce those this quantity here, 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 I'll get this. Okay, so this is the phi t star, this is phi t, this is phi t star, this is phi t. Okay, in the numerator we have an additional term, there is a Hamiltonian operator, but in the denominator we don't have such terms. Okay, now what I'm going to do, I will apply this Hamiltonian operator to this function psi naught. Then I will apply the Hamiltonian operator to the function psi 1, to the function psi 2. Since these are all eigenfunctions, psi naught, psi 1, psi 2 are eigenfunctions, so when you apply the Hamiltonian operator to the eigenfunction psi naught, I will get the corresponding energy E naught and psi naught. What is E naught? E naught is the actual ground state energy of the system, right? Similarly, if I apply Hamiltonian operator to psi 1, I will get E1 into psi 1. Okay, so since they are eigenfunctions, if I apply a Hamiltonian operator to the function, okay, I will get the corresponding energy multiplied with the same function. Okay, so if I apply this Hamiltonian operator to these functions, what will I get? Yeah, I will get, okay, when I apply H operator to psi naught, I will get E naught into psi naught. If I apply H operator to psi 1, I will get E1 into psi 1. If I apply H operator to psi 2, I will get E2 into psi 2. Okay, yeah, then keep the denominator terms as such, right? Keep all other terms as such. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to multiply, right? But before that, I'll bring this complex conjugate to each of these terms individually. I'll write that first. So if I bring it inside, I'll get C naught star psi naught star plus C1 star psi 1 star, because since it is a complex conjugate, it is applicable for all the terms. Okay, then keep the second bracket as such. Then in the denominator also you do the same thing, and you'll get this integral. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to multiply this C naught star with all these terms first, with all these terms. Okay, suppose if I multiply this with the first term, what will I get? I'll get C naught star C naught into E naught. See, C naught star C naught into E naught. Okay, I'm keeping it as such. Then I'll get integral psi naught star psi naught star psi naught d tau. Okay, listen, you know very well psi naught is normalized, therefore integral psi naught star psi naught d tau will be equal to 1. But if I multiply the C naught star psi naught with the second term, if I multiply with second term, what will happen? Listen, we'll get C naught star C1 E1 integral psi naught star psi 1 d tau will get. Okay, as we know already that psi naught, psi 1 are the wave functions of two different energy levels. Therefore, they are orthogonal. So, since they are orthogonal, this integral value becomes 0. Therefore, except the first term, all other terms, okay, become 0. Similarly, if you take the second term here, okay, let me clear this one. Right. Similarly, what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the second term now. We'll take the second term, right, and multiply with all these terms. What will happen? So if I multiply, I'll get C1 star. In the first term, I'll get C1 star C naught E naught into integral psi 1 star psi naught d tau. That will be 0. So the only term that will exist, okay, if you multiply with this one, all other term become 0. So in a similar manner, if you multiply with all the terms in the first bracket with all the term in the second bracket, okay, only these integrals will exist. Okay, right? Similarly, in the denominator also I am multiplying, right? So except these terms, all other term become 0 due to orthonormality of the system. Okay, now listen, see what is this? Integral psi naught star psi naught d tau is 1. This is 1. Similarly, this is 1. So if you put these values as 1, what will left with is, yeah, this is the quantity C naught star C naught into E naught, C1 star C1 into E1, C2 star C2 into E2 plus etc. divided by C naught star C naught plus C1 star C1 plus C1 star C1 plus C2 star C2 etc. Okay, so this is the equation we end up with. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to subtract the actual ground state energy E naught. So you know very well, for our system the actual ground state energy is E naught, and this is first excited energy is E1, second excited state energy is E2. Like this we have different excited states. Now what I'm going to do, I'll take the actual ground state energy E naught, which we don't know what is the exact value right now. So what I'm going to subtract, but this value definitely exists, that I know. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to subtract this E naught in the left hand side as well as in the right hand side. Okay, so if you subtract in both the side, right, nothing going to happen, right? So I'm going to subtract the ground state energy in left hand side as well as in right hand side. Now what I'm going to do, in the right hand side, see here, and I have made one more thing. You know very well, C naught star C naught. What is C naught star C naught? C naught star C naught. Okay, a number and its complex conjugate. If you multiply, that should be equal to mod of that number square, magnitude of that number square. Okay, so this C naught star C naught become modulus of C naught square. Similarly here, C1 star C1 become modulus of C1 square, modulus of C2 square, etc. Similarly in the denominator. Okay, now what I'm going to do, I'm going to take LCM. Okay, if I take LCM, what will I get? Okay, if I take LCM, right, see, I have to multiply this entire quantity with E naught. So I'll get this expression. Now what I'm going to do, listen, here you have to multiply E naught with this, E naught with this, E naught with this. So you'll get so after multiplying you'll get a term. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to subtract the first bracket terms and the second bracket terms. I'm going to do that. Listen, in the first bracket, see the first term of first bracket, C naught square E naught. Similarly, the first term of the second bracket is also the same, E naught into C naught square. So they cancel. Okay, then the remaining terms. Okay, so since this first term cancel, now I'll take the second term. See the second term of here and second term of here. Okay, here, so if I the second term, right, one second, yeah, let me clear this and I'll explain that. So now if I take the second term, yeah, if I take the second term, see second term here has modulus of C1 square E1, whereas second term here has modulus of C1 square E naught. Okay, so if you take modulus of C1 square as common, then you can write it as E1 minus E0. Similarly, see the third term of first bracket, modulus of C2 square into E2, whereas the third term in the second bracket is modulus of C2 square into E0. So if you take modulus of C2 square as common, you will get E2 minus E0. Similarly, you can have many terms like this, and denominator we have this. Okay, now see this is very important. We know very well E0 is the actual ground state energy of the system, which we don't know, and E1 is the first excited state energy, E2 is the second excited state energy, E3 is the third excited state energy. Like this we have many states, and we know very well E1 is greater than E0 because E0 is the ground state, and E2 is greater than E0, E3 is greater than E0. Okay, therefore this E1 minus E0 should be a positive quantity. Similarly, this E2 minus E0 should be a positive quantity. Not only that, this modulus of C1 square, modulus of C2 square, these are also positive quantities. So they are all positive quantities, they never be zero. Okay, therefore what we can say, E minus E0, right, should be greater than 0 for most of the cases, because the right hand side quantity will be always positive quantity, greater than 0. Okay, now listen, this will become 0, right, only under the condition that if this modulus of C1 square, that is these coefficients, if modulus of C1 square is 0, because E1 minus E0 cannot be 0 for a given system. E1 is always having higher energy compared to the ground state energy, so E1 minus E0 cannot be 0. Similarly, E2 minus E0 cannot be 0, and they are all always positive quantity. So this right hand side becomes 0 only if the coefficients modulus of C1 square equal to 0, modulus of C2 square equal to 0, modulus of C3 square equal to 0. If all these become 0, then what we left with? See, we know very well the trial wave function that we have chosen is actually C0 into Psi0, C1 into Psi1, C2 into Psi2, plus etc. Now see, C1 is 0, C2 is 0, C3 is 0. If C1 is 0, this term vanishes, and if C2 is 0, this term vanishes. So all the higher terms vanishes. So what is the only term we left with? Okay, that corresponds to the ground state wave function. So if your trial wave function is exactly same as the ground state wave function, actual ground state wave function, then the right hand side term becomes 0. You will get E minus E0 as 0. Yes, this is possible, but it's a very rare situation. Okay, only under very rare situation, or only if your trial wave function is exactly equal to the ground state wave function of the system, then only this will happen. Okay, so but this is possible. Therefore, by combining these two, we can write E minus E0, okay, should be greater than or equal to 0, right? Or we can write this as, okay, I'll write in the next page. So E minus E0, sorry, I have to write the correct notation here, even in the last page. Yeah, correct notation we have to make. What is that? See here, see this E0, I have to write in capital letters, E0. That's all. Right? All other things are same. Okay, while writing, right, I made a small mistake here. So keep this one, right? So E minus E0. What is this subscript E? Subscript E is the energy calculated from variation method. What is E0? E0 is the actual ground state energy of the system. Okay, so E minus E0 should be greater than or equal to 0, or we can write E is greater than or equal to E0. So what does this indicate? It indicates that the expectation energy that we have calculated using variation method for a given trial wave function will be always, for most of the time, it is greater than E0. That's why we say that the variation method gives you gives you energy which is upper bound to the ground state energy of the system. Okay, very rarely you will get the exact energy. Okay, you will get the exact energy only if the trial wave function is the exact wave function. Okay, yeah. So this is the variation theorem. Right, I stop here. We'll continue in lecture number 4. Thank you.